The used car market has been absolutely exploding and Carvana is taking full advantage. Why is this happening? I want to talk about some of the advantages that Carvana has been looking at, the profits, but more importantly, why are people choosing to buy so many used cars, absolutely exploding the market? Well, let's start from the top, shall we? It all kind of starts at a time when we look at the manufacturers creating cars that were very expensive, shall we say. We've seen prices rising, and we've seen them rising since what? Way back in 2020, 21. And when you look at absolutely over time, adjusted for inflation, cars have always risen. There's always been a slight rise over time. But when you include inflation, certainly it looks like these numbers are out of control. Adjusted for inflation, not as much. With some brands, we've seen Stellantis being one of those that are getting carried away. We're seeing a lot of these OEMs and their trucks and SUVs by GM. We're also seeing a lot of the EV manufacturers cranking up their prices, up to the point of just recently where we've all of a sudden see that US federal tax credit of $7,500 go bye-bye, and now all of a sudden sales have fallen off a cliff for brand new vehicles. So what does that mean for used vehicles? A lot of us buyers out there are just looking to get a vehicle. We need to get a car to get us from A to B to C to D. But buying a new car these days, a lot of buyers just don't have the confidence. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, how reliable are some of these new cars? Turbo 3-cylinder, 4-cylinder engines with direct fuel injection and PCV problems and hybrid drives attached to the back end, and a lot of electronic tech that just means it's a trip to the dealer for every little problem. Whereas back in the day, you could give your old car a slap on the top of the dash and the lights would come back on. Pretty cheap fix. But yeah, things are different now, and that's why a lot of people are shying away from the new cars. It's the sticker shock. The new car pricing is getting out of control, and it's way beyond adjusted for inflationary numbers. But Carvana has figured this out, and a lot of other used car retailers have figured this out. As a matter of fact, things have absolutely been skyrocketing in the last few months. Well, the last year or so. And Carvana certainly remotely selling a lot of these used products. They don't represent a specific brand per se, but selling all of these used inventory just means that it was an opportunity that meant their profits have gone through the roof. Yeah, I've looked at here, and for a while we thought their outlook was kind of bleak. I mean, Carvana's had some ups and downs, certainly over the last few years. And for a while there, you couldn't get used cars. Inventory was low, and if that's their line of business and you couldn't get inventory, it was kind of tough to do business. But when we look at some of the recent statistics, for example, what we've seen from Carvana here recently, with a big demand in used cars. Of course, net income landed them about $263 million. On top of that, EBITDA, the adjusted for inflation number, or of course $637 million, is a standout with about 11.3% margin. Now these are all just silly numbers, of course. With about 158,000 cars sold in the third quarter, that's actually up 44% from the same time last year. Yeah, what are they saying? Management, they expect the momentum to continue on with over 150,000 units sold in the fourth quarter and at least $2.2 billion EBITDA adjusted, of course, values. And with all of that said, what that generally means is the stock prices, even though they've dropped slightly, they've actually gone down about 7% here recently, as reported by so-called analysts. Some of that could be attributed to the fact that they're getting a little overzealous in their analyzing, of course, and their approach to the business. That being said, they're making nothing but money hand over fist. And Carvana, definitely, they're right in the sweet spot right now. And how do they land in such a great spot? How do a lot of these used car retailers land up in such a great spot right now? It's simply because of the price of these new vehicles. I mean, we look around and we think, what is some of the big players today doing? Honda's got all kinds of recalls for bad engines. I was in there shopping recently. I had a look at the Honda Pilot. It's a beautiful vehicle and actually very well appointed, 3-row SUV. Feels like a really nice quality product and certainly nicely put together. And then, anticlimactic, they had to go and pull out this recall, a recall for how many millions of engines. That 3.5 liter V6, they've had problems. Okay, great. Very expensive car with reliability problems. That seems to be the theme. How do we know this? Well, look around. Toyota, same thing with their V6 engines. They've had problems. And so is General Motors with their 6.2s and the 5.3s. Stellantis, they've been all over the place with their turbo, their turbocharged 6-cylinder, and now they're getting, apparently, coming back with the V8s again, and the Hemis should be rearing their faces again. But the point is, with Jeeps and Stellantis products, and even Fords and the Recall Kings, they're all charging so much money these days. And that would be good. That would be fine if the products were indisputably reliable. Like if the cars and the trucks and the SUVs that they sold today would start and run for 25 years and you didn't have a lot of problems with them, then people would probably be okay in investing in a product that just held together and stayed together. But that doesn't seem to be the case. What are the other options? Well, some people now, that real diehard EV lovers, and certainly there are a lot of those out there, that are saying, well, you know what, I used to love the big V8s, and I used to love my gas engines, and I used to love my 4-cylinders, and then I tried a Tesla or I tried some EV, and I loved it, and I'd never go back. I'm hearing some of those phrases in those comments. But that being said, a lot of these EVs are getting extraordinarily expensive. And it doesn't take very long to figure out that buying a brand new EQS for way in the 6-figure stratospheric numbers is absolutely an abysmal approach on your investment strategy. In other words, if you care at all about your money, you're pissing it away to the wind, because a lot of these EV cars are so expensive brand new, and that's where the Carvanas come in. They look at these, they see the Hertz are flooding the market. They're seeing a lot of people are now flipping their EVs. EQS, EQE products by Mercedes-Benz are probably, well, from what I've seen, largely in that 50-60% lost in the first couple of years. Tesla's losing money like they're going out of style, especially when we're talking about the base trims, the Model 3s, the Model Ys. Their values are dropping off a cliff. But even more so are the Model X's and S's. Those vehicles are not selling well on the used car market. Why? People are still panicked about, the deterioration of the battery, the high cost of replacement battery of parts. There's still that, reluctance to buy EVs because of range anxiety and cold weather impacts. And so those that really wanted to have them bought them new. But the used car market stinks. And of course it's abysmal, and as a result, the values drop off. But there's still that pocket of people that are looking at buying used EVs, because instead of buying, say, a new EV for, say, $65,000, they can get one that 3-year-old still has 88% of its original capacity or 92% of its original battery capacity, and they can buy that car now for $25,000, $26,000. They see, hey, I'm willing to give that a try. And since the federal tax credit went bye-bye, that's not having a positive impact for new EV sales anymore. So with that said, those that are looking at buying an EV are saying, you know what? Why don't we just try a used one? We're not going to get the tax credits anyway, so let's just go used. Because new no longer has the advantage. Buying new, you're not saving that big chunk of change anymore. And that's why, partially why we've seen new car sales fall off a cliff for EVs just recently here, because of the tax credit getting yanked. Well, so much for that, right? But at the end of the day, the used market is where it's at. Used EVs, that's what's going on. They don't want to buy them new anymore, but they're willing to try them used. And prices have fallen off a cliff because of depreciation and all those concerns, so Carvana just slides right in there and has enough inventory for those buyers that are eager to try an EV. Okay, what about some of the other vehicles? Well, why are used cars so popular right now? Well, you think about some of the problems that GM and Chevy are having with their V8 engines. But could you imagine backdating to a time when their engines weren't that problematic? Maybe the old 6 liters, maybe the old 5.7s. I mean, you go far enough back and you find some real workhorses that are very reliable. And that's where the used car market comes in. Before a lot of these new problematic drivetrains. Some people would argue that cars built before 2020 were tenfold more reliable than anything after 20 or 21. Is that true? Well, we're seeing a lot more recalls of everything brand new from anything built from 21, 22 and beyond. Lots of recalls, lots of quality problems, lots of technical problems, electronics failing like they're going out of style. We're hearing Ford, automatic transmissions, GM, automatic transmissions, 6.2, 5.3, as well as the EcoBoost by Ford. Lots of problems. Belts running your oil pump? That seemed like a good idea at the time. Not. Plus, this new modular design means that Ford drastically reduced the number of individual components going in their vehicle. Well, guess what? A lot of buyers of Ford trucks are saying, you know what? Wait a minute. They're modularizing this. That means less chance of me fixing something on a dime, more likely me fixing a large component that's going to be extraordinarily expensive in these brand new trucks. You're right. That's largely what's going on. They're easy to source out. That part, that design is good at the factory, less individual parts to assemble. So it saves money on the front end and it makes the money at the parts shop, which of course is one of their biggest lines of business. So hence, it seems like a very much a business strategy, designed obsolescence, create a product that is going to break down. It's going to drag the customers into the service bays. That's their biggest line of business. But of course, a lot of customers are starting to slowly figure this out. And while it's great to have brand new cars, you know what? A lot of people are also making a decision. If I'm going to buy it all brand new, I'm going to lease it, or I'm going to flip it after 3 years once the warranty's gone. But clearly those that actually care about their money realize, as fun as that is to own a new vehicle and saving myself from the disgrace, the hardship, and the pain, and the anxiety and anguish of owning a new one just rolling outside of warranty and having to take it in for major engine work, just means no longer a smart decision. A lot of people are now going to those used cars. Go figure. I too have been a strong advocate for buying used cars myself through the mass majority of my life. And a lot of it is not because the newest is always junk, because sometimes new cars are improved, and many times there's new cars that are enhanced and much better. They perform better, and in some cases offer just a better driving experience. There are cases of that. I mean, you can look around at Lexus products and Toyotas, and some of these brands do still carry engines and drivetrains that are probably better than some of the stuff that they built at one point. You know, Toyota had oil-burning engines, and then they created a newer model that was better. Anyway, moving on. With that said, of course, with Carvana's growth, experts and analysts anticipate Carvana's profits to skyrocket even further in the coming weeks, months, and of course the coming years. And I do truly believe that's going to be a thing. As I've also owned largely used vehicles through the mass majority of my life, a lot of that came from the place of depreciation. It always seems to be, you know, you can get a $40,000 brand new Honda, or I can get a $40,000 2-year-old BMW and get a premium upscale vehicle or a premium luxury vehicle for the same money. And the reason I've made it work for me is because I'm a good DIYer and I'm okay in doing the odd repair on some of these more expensive vehicles. Because they're out of warranty, I'm getting 10 times the vehicle for the same money. But see, things are starting to change even for people like me that are great DIYers. See, while we used to believe that buying a slightly used luxury car was great value, once a warranty ran out, we had that opportunity to get that great experience. A lot of people are seeing that as a huger risk now, because now a lot of these new luxury cars that are maybe 2 or 3, 4 years old now, just rolling out of warranty, are too complicated for your home do-it-yourselfer now. And it means a trip to the dealership. And that offset cost or savings that you might get by buying that slightly used, just out of warranty Audi might mean a $15,000 gearbox replacement, a $25,000 engine change, or even a module for $4,000 or $5,000 when that screen craps out on you. So a lot of people are now looking at this and saying, you know what, we're going to buy something a little bit older, 5, 10 years older. Many enthusiasts, many car owners actually believe you've got to go back to 2010, 12, and maybe 14 at the latest to get what the industry provided as some of the best, most durable, reliable, and innovative vehicles ever produced. Then, of course, after that, EPA, CARB standards start rolling in, engine manufacturers, car manufacturers started creating vehicles with smaller, tight, highly strung engines. You know, hybrid, we're talking hybrid drives, turbo 3s, turbo 4s, direct fuel injection, where maybe they once had a V6, now they have a turbo 4. We're starting to see these shifts. And now, because of that, many would argue that cars, you know, that were maybe 10 years old from this point backwards are probably the most reliable, longest lasting vehicles. And even if they weren't, at least you could fix them. I mean, a lot of the older Chevys, you could fix a lot of those parts. You just do a part swap out, you're good to go. Now it's a very complicated affair. Some of these vehicles, you have to take the cab off to access the engine to do any servicing. And so that just means it's more and more and more dealer-centric to get your vehicle serviced. So, hence, new car sales are always going to be there. And they're always going to sell. And it's always nice to have a new vehicle. But it should always fall within your budget. And you should always do your research, because not two vehicles are the same. As a matter of fact, even in one manufacturer, a Ford 3.5 is not the same as a Ford 2.7. So you've got to make sure you do your research. And EVs, pretty much hands off. But some people are willing to take a chance just because that massive depreciation, it seems like a risk some people are willing to take. But at the end of the day, Carvana has shown time and time again, and more so in this last year, that the increased sales in the used car market is predominantly driven by a bunch of buyers that are done with expensive, brand new, overpriced, gouged vehicles that are going to have you tied up and bound and gagged at the local dealer service network. I'd like to hear your thoughts down below. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you all real soon. Thanks again, everybody. Bye-bye.